So the next question is, how easy was it to get a visa to come to the UK? Yet the visa process was actually extremely easy compared to the experience that I had with my husband anyway. We had been together for a while, so we were well established. That made it a lot easier. My husband was still a British citizen, also made it easier. His family is still here. Most of his family is still here. So his mom was still here, and that made it a lot easier because we could set her, her address up for a residence when we got here, etc. And my daughter, we had already gotten dual citizenship for my daughter because she was born in America. She was naturalized, excuse me, I'm American citizen. Because because my husband and his mother were still British citizens, and because his mother still lived in Britain, she was able to apply for dual citizenship from birth, which was really, really cool. So we had made the decision early on in her life that she was going to have both of those citizenships just to have options for her. Also, just to make travel easier, if my husband wanted to come back here with my daughter on their own and just getting the customs and things like that, it would have been a lot easier. So with those two things being established already previously before we decided to move, it made our life a lot easier. And when we decided to apply for the visa, we did end up hiring a lawyer, a solicitor, for those of you in the UK. They were UK based, and they pretty much walked us through everything that we needed to do. We sent them all the money, obviously, ahead of time, and all of the documentation and pictures. There was 2 or 3 forms that we had to fill out. We had to show birth certificates, evidence of our marriage and any previous marriages. We had to show documentation about our house and our deed, our daughter's information, our passports. We had to do pictures of our life together. I had to show pictures of travel, that like stamps in my passport of travel that we had done internationally, just to show that we obviously were a legit couple and it wasn't, some kind of scam just to get me in the UK or anything like that. Once we got all of that established, it was pretty easy. Once we got all that information to them, we had encountered a lot of timing delays. For us, it was a timing issue more than anything. There was a delay because we had applied right after or right around the time that the Ukraine-Russian war started. So there was an influx of refugees into the UK, and obviously they took priority. So that kind of pushed our application back a few weeks. Then it was Christmas time, and apparently everybody shuts down for Christmas here because the national religion is the Church of England Protestant. So Christmas is a national holiday here. And so a lot of people get a good amount of time off around Christmas, government shut down, etc. So we had a couple weeks delay for that. And then the Queen died. So the whole country was in mourning for a few weeks. Again, the government shut down for a couple weeks, blah, 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 stuff like that. So it ended up taking a lot longer than we had been told originally that it would take. But other than that, it was a really, really easy process. And everyone in the embassy everyone at the lawyer's office that we spoke to was pretty helpful. I didn't have to step foot in a government agency at all. I didn't have to visit anyone at an embassy. I didn't have to have any interviews. I didn't have to check in with anyone once I arrived. So once the application once all the delays were done, then I got an email saying I had to get my biometrics done, which is basically an eye scan and fingerprinting. And again, they go through your documentation just to make sure you are who you say you are. But it wasn't really an interview. It was just like, can I see your passport? Can I see your driver's license? Can I see your birth certificate? That kind of stuff. And then, you have your little metrics done and it's all computerized. So it takes like 15 minutes and then you're off. And the facility that I went to even have my bios done was like a private facility. They were immigration officers that actually worked for the immigration, but it was like a subsidy. It was like privatized out. Shocking. But once that was done, we just had to wait for the decision, really. And there's no reason that I don't have a criminal record. I don't have any of that stuff hanging over my head that might delay it. And we were, like I said, because my daughter was a citizen, that pushed it through a little bit faster as well. In the UK, they have a huge policy. I don't know if it's a national official policy or anything, but they do not separate families. Unlike some of the US immigration laws, there is a child that's a British citizen and they are going to be a resident of Britain, which my daughter didn't have to apply for anything. She didn't have to do anything. She already had her British passport. So that pushed me along and helped me as well. So we just had to wait for the decision at that point, and that's why we because we had some time, that's why we ended up being able to travel and stuff, 'cause our house sold already and we didn't have a place to live anyway. So that's why we were able to travel and stuff before we left. Yeah, the process was really, really easy actually. If you have the extra money, I recommend going through a lawyer or some kind of some kind of intermediary, just because it can be extremely complicated. We actually used a similar kind of facilitator when we were applying for a green card for my husband, and they're basically the middleman. They deal with the embassy and all the stuff and make all the appointments, and they just tell you what you have to do. And it did make it a lot easier, even on the US side where it was so much more complicated. But it is additional fees. So while I can understand you can do it on your own, and for the UK part of it, it was pretty straightforward, so it's probably easier to do it on your own. But for us, because we had the extra money, we wanted to invest in that just to make the whole thing a lot less stressful, just because we had so much added stress to it. It wasn't just applying for the visa, it was the move, it was selling our house, it was our daughter going through her issues and the school issues and everything else that came with all of that, finding jobs and all that stuff. So it just made it easier for us to have someone else kind of handle the details and just tell us what we needed to do. And I do recommend that if you get a chance. It's kind of like if you have the money, hiring movers, so you don't have to worry about doing the heavy lifting yourself. But obviously, I understand not everybody's in that boat.